Sam Altman just testified before Congress. Now, how will this impact the future of AI? Is OpenAI in trouble? What even was the purpose of this hearing? In this video, I'm gonna answer all of that and more. My name is Ondrej, and here is everything you need to know about the Sam Altman testimony. So the topic of the congressional hearing was the potential and risks of artificial intelligence. But Sam wasn't there alone. Together with him, there was Christina Montgomery, a chief privacy and trust officer for IBM, and also Gary Marcus, a professor from New York University. The main senator opened the hearing by playing an audio clip entirely generated by ChatGPT. Take a listen.
Too often, we have seen what happens when technology outpaces regulation. This is not the future we want.
Sam Altman, along with the two other AI experts, emphasized the urgency of putting adequate safeguards and regulations in place. Because if the US government doesn't take action now, it might be too late. This is exactly what Elon was warning us about for all those years.
I try to convince people to slow down AI, to regulate AI. This was futile. I tried for years.
But it wasn't all negative. AI, specifically generative AI, was recognized for its potential to transform fields like healthcare, physics, biology, and climate modeling. Basically, Sam Altman's goal was to show that AI is something that can improve our lives tremendously, but at the same time, we need the regulation to make sure that it doesn't destroy us. One of the most important reasons why Sam and other AI experts are pushing so hard on regulations to be implemented as soon as possible is because it's 2023, meaning the next year the presidential election is happening, and if there aren't any regulations and safeguards in place, then AI will have a tremendous impact. You could easily have thousands, tens of thousands of AI bots generating spam content to sway people to vote the other way. And what's crazy is that the AI models that scrape the internet, they actually look for data, and if a lot of that data is AI generated for some agenda, then those models will fundamentally be flawed and biased. And it would be nice if all of that was figured out before the presidential elections.
There's a lot of policies that companies can voluntarily adopt, and I'm happy to talk about what we do there. I do think some regulation would be quite wise.
The leading senator said that his biggest worry is that AI will remove a lot of jobs. And he asked Sam what he thought about that. But Sam's response was a little more optimistic. He said that, sure, AI might replace and it will replace some jobs, but it will also create new ones, and he thinks the new ones will be better than the old ones. Like, let's be honest, nobody wants to do these repetitive and monotonous tasks. It's good that AI will replace those. He also stresses that GPT-4 is a tool, not a creature. And while it might be good at doing tasks, it's not good at doing full jobs. So people are still needed for now. However, Sam kind of flipped the script on him and said that the issue of unemployment is mostly government's job to figure out, not the job of, OpenAI. And that politicians and society in general need to figure out what the future will look like. Now, perhaps the most interesting part of this entire meeting was when Gary Marcus put Sam Altman on the spot. Just watch this.
And last, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I will note that Sam's worst fear, I do not think, is employment, and he never told us what his worst fear actually is, and I think it's germane to find out.
My worst fears are that we, the field, the technology, the industry, cause significant harm to the world. I think that could happen in a lot of different ways. It's why we started the company. It's a big part of why I'm here today, and why we've been here in the past, and we've been able to spend some time with you. I think if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong, and we want to be vocal about that. We want to work with the government to prevent that from happening, but we try to be very clear-eyed about what the downside case is and the work that we have to do to mitigate that.
Some other topics included the potential misuse of AI for spreading disinformation and exacerbating social inequalities. To put it simply, making the rich richer and making the poor even more behind. And personally, I don't see how AI couldn't do that. I mean, the people who are interested in it right now, the people who are learning about it, they will inevitably benefit the most, while the people who dismiss it and just hope it goes away, of course they will fall behind. The complexity and opacity of AI models like GPT-4 was also addressed, highlighting the need for greater understanding of how these super powerful models actually work, because right now we have no clue. Sam was also asked how ChatGPT will affect the creators, and this is what he had to say.
I think it's really helping the creators. I think it's amazing to talk to creators about how they're using the current tools. People talk about it as the most important creative tool they've ever gotten used in their new career.
Sam Altman acknowledged the need for companies like Google and OpenAI OpenAI, who are the ones creating these AI systems, to be held accountable if those AI systems actually end up causing harm. He suggested that we shouldn't apply the same rules and regulations that we have for social media. Like, for example, there is this one rule that's Section 230, which protects social media companies from liability for user-generated content. You know, if someone posts something harmful on Facebook, for example, then Facebook wouldn't be held accountable. But he says, as the CEO of an AI company, that that's not the case, that actually the AI company should be held accountable, not the guy who used ChatGPT to scam some grandmas or whatever. And honestly, I think Sam deserves a lot more credit than he gets for this. He could have went on there and just said the things that were best for him and for OpenAI. But a lot of the things he actually pushed were directly against the interest of OpenAI, or at least made OpenAI's job a lot harder. Like, for example, he expressed willingness to collaborate on establishing new liability frameworks for AI. Now, Sam is a very busy guy, and to volunteer his time to this cause just goes to show how much he really believes in it. He thinks that regulation will be critical to mitigate the risks of AI.
For example, the US government might consider a combination of licensing and testing requirements for development and release of AI models above a threshold of capabilities.
Now, AI has a bunch of risks on its own, but the combination of AI and social media is particularly risky. For example, on Twitter, you have no idea whether you're talking to a real account or not, unless they're verified, which means, you know, they had to pay the $8 a month. When you take AI, the worst of AI and the worst of social media, you can cause a lot of harm. Sam Altman proposed the establishment of disclosure rules for companies providing AI models with potential manipulative abilities. So like, let's say you have GPT-6 in the future and it's so good that it can convince humans to do its bidding, to do whatever he wants to do. So the AI would be stuck in the software, but the humans would be the ones doing the harm. Sam Altman also thinks that there will only be a few companies developing truly cutting-edge systems, like those systems that can push the field forward. You know, the open source field doing some amazing work, but there'll always be a little bit behind than the closed source companies.
What's happening on the open source community is amazing, but there will be a relatively small number of providers that can make models at the true leading edge. I think there is benefits and danger to that. Like, as we were talking about all of the dangers with AI, the fewer of us that you really have to keep a careful eye on the absolute like bleeding edge of capabilities, there's benefits there. I think there needs to be enough, and there will, because there's so much value.
Sam really wants the US to take a leading role in regulating AI, and he compared the need for AI oversight to the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, whose job it is to make sure that the nuclear war doesn't happen. One of Sam's ideas was the creation of an alignment dataset, or an AI constitution, to guide AI behavior and values. To put it simply, this is kind of a solution, or at least a proposed solution to the alignment problem, which basically states that we need to make sure that super intelligent AI has the same goals, or at the very least similar goals to humanity. Otherwise, we might not survive. Now, the next point caught me off guard. Sam thinks that users should have the option to opt out from companies like OpenAI using their data to train future models. And honestly, this is a little hypocritical, because if you go to ChatGPT right now, you can only opt out, but you also don't have any chat history. And a lot of people want their chat history. Like, it would be nice if those weren't linked. Like, why do you have to be opted in, agree that your data will be used to train future models, or you don't have access to chat history? Like, that's kind of weird, Sam.
I think a minimum is that users should be able to sort of opt out from having their data used by companies like ours or the social media companies. It should be easy to delete your data.
It's clear that one of Sam Altman's main goals for this congressional hearing was to convince the government to establish a regulatory body that is global and that is led by the US. And it would include all countries like India and notably China, which, you know, is kind of a little bit of a taboo topic in this AI field, where everybody's like, oh, but what if China develops AGI? But Sam thinks that China is actually also interested in not destroying the world. So he knows that it will be hard, but he is hopeful and he knows that it is possible. Sam also acknowledged the possibility of different regions and countries developing AI systems that support different values. Now, he said that this could potentially lead to conflicts, but on the other hand, it kind of makes sense, because the culture in the US is different than the culture in India, which is different than the culture in Russia, which is different than the culture in South America. Like, you kinda want to have different AIs. Like if you ask ChatGPT a question, you would like it to know your culture, your people, your religion. But Sam thinks that this could lead to issues, which is exact opposite of what Emad Mostak thinks, the founder of Stability AI. He thinks that each country should have their own AI model that represents their own values and beliefs. It's interesting to see these two titans of the AI industry disagreeing like that. Sam understands that people are anxious about AI advancing so fast, and he says that they, or OpenAI, are also anxious.
As this technology advances, we understand that people are anxious about how it could change the way we live. We are too. But we believe that we can and must work together to identify and manage the potential downsides so that we can all enjoy the tremendous upsides.
But despite telling Congress that AI should be regulated, Sam doesn't want the regulation to be so harsh and so restrictive that the entire American AI industry becomes slowed down. And he emphasized that regulatory pressure should target larger companies without stifling smaller startups and independent researchers, which is honestly hilarious because this sounds like it's directly targeted at Google and Meta, while making OpenAI seem like a small startup with just 300 employees while Google has hundreds of thousands. Same for Meta. It's kinda funny how Sam Altman tried to pull a quick one in the middle of a congressional hearing. Now, as you can probably tell, the main topic of the hearing was AI regulations. And while a lot of it was broad and, kinda high level, there were three main suggestions. Number one, including a safety review before widespread deployment. Number two, the creation of a monitoring agency to follow AI developments. And number three, more funding for AI safety and research. Overall, the congressional hearing highlighted the potential of such discussions to significantly impact the future of AI, emphasizing the need for collaborative efforts among independent scientists, governments, and AI companies. Now, if you'd like to see more videos on the latest AI news, then please subscribe. It takes 1.7 seconds.